Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some home decor DIYs. Before we get started, do not forget to subscribe. All right, first one is going to be this sculpture that's inspired by a CB2 sculpture that I did see that is $199. So what I'm going to be using is some paper and some plaster of Paris. You can also make your own little plaster with like school glue and water, but I'm going to be using this. All right, so it's 1 part water to 2 parts of the plaster of Paris. I'm going to play around with it to get the consistency that I want. I did scoop in 1 cup of water, but then I'm going to be scooping in half cups just to see it and see how it looks before I finalize the mixture. All right, and I did say this is inspired by the CB2 decor. CB2 has some really nice home decor that I do like. But sometimes it is a bit out of my price range. So I try to DIY what I can. All right. So like I said, I'm mixing it in and getting out all the bumps and the clumps of plaster that are in there and getting it to like a thin tight paste before I get started with the strips. I did pre-cut the strips to about 2 inches wide, and as long as the paper that comes, if you don't have like newspaper, the paper that comes in the mail, that's what I am using, and I'm just dipping it in and squeezing it over, and you'll get something to go around and shape. Anything plastic or anything, the plaster will just come right off of there. I did wrap it in a plastic bag just to make sure. These are just bowls that I had from the Dollar Tree, and I wrapped them in the plastic so that it was easier to take off, and they were less messy, and I didn't have to clean up that much when I was done. Once I got a good amount of layers on there, I smoothed it out just to make sure it wasn't too lumpy. I did want it to look sculpture-y, but not too clumpy. So I smoothed it out the best I could and let it to dry. Once it dries, you see like you'll have little scraggly pieces, which like I said, they break off easy. Anything that's not on the paper is going to come off relatively easy. So I did that, cut the bag open and slid it out. And once I was done, then I had the first piece for the sculpture. And then I just went back and did the other piece. First, I had to find a flat way to lay it. So I found the flattest side and then draped the other pieces around just the same and closed it up because, it's paper, and put another bowl underneath there to let that dry and sit up. And that's it for that part. Once it fully dries, what you're going to do is come back in. I used a 150 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand off some of the super rough edges and then come back and spray paint it and touch it up with a little bit of paint, and then that will be it for that. And I think I saved a whole bunch of money because for $199 you do get 2 sculptures. I did just make 1 piece, so I saved like $100. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that one, and we'll get on to the next one. The next one is going to be inspired by some West Elm vases that I did see. And these run about $118 to $180. They are bigger, but you can get a bigger vase and do this. You can thrift a vase, or you can do like I did and get a vase from the Dollar Tree, which works good for me because I'm doing this to decorate my shelves, and my shelves aren't that tall. So I don't want anything that is too big, but if you wanted to go bigger, you could go bigger. So I go inside, like I said, and then I go on the outside with a couple of more layers, and that's it for that part. Once that is dry, then you'll peel it up from the paper. It does sometimes stick, but that's all right because it's on the bottom. And what I'll do is just freehand a shape for the front of it. For the West Elm one, it was more of a like staggered type rectangle look, but because this vase is small and it bubbles out, I'm gonna go with this shape here. And then once you draw the shape, you just fill it in, and that is it for that one. And for this one is inspired by things that I've seen on Etsy and other places like Anthropologie and things, but it's just a yarn wall hanging. A lot of times they do use macrame, which is going to give you a chunkier feel. If you wanted the chunkier feel, you would use more yarn, but I have a lot of scrap yarn around, and this one goes with the colors that are in my house, so I wanted to do this one. Like I say, all of these are easy to do. And if you wanted to, this would be a good one because, like I said, I do see them on Etsy and other places a lot, and they run for like $165, $135. This would be a good one to make if you were looking for a handmade item to sell, or it'd be a good gift to give to somebody. But I'm going to keep this one and use it around my house. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just determine the length I want the like tassels to be, and then I'm just going to keep looping around that length until I get the desired thickness that I do want, and then cut that off and tie it once around a stick. I'm using this metal stick just to keep everything in place. You can use anything, you just don't want the loops to be too big, because when you finish it off, you know, you're going to want them to be able to slide on and off whatever you're going to be using to hold the pieces up, but you don't want it to be a big gap in it. So you want to use something similar to what you're going to be finishing the product out with. All right, so once you do that, you'll just stagger the pieces up and down. So I'm doing them different lengths, so they're not all going to be uniform. You could do it uniform, but I like the way the ones that I did see were with the different sizes. And this is just another great way just to use things that you might have around your house, because I know a lot of people do have a stash of yarn. Like you get them and you're like, oh, that's a great color, and then you don't use it. So, and there's something else to do with your yarn besides just making blankets or making scarves or hats or what have you and stuff. It's another cute way to decorate your house, and it's all easy, and it's like something that you can do basically on a budget, because the fact that I already have the yarn, it's free. You know, so once I've done all the pieces that I want, well, I ran out of yarn, so this was all that I could do for this. I would have made it fuller if I had more yarn, but I didn't. But anyway, so I tie the pieces off, and that's it for that part. And then I'm just going to start to wrap around the yarn around each one of the sections. Right, so you give it a little space there, and then you just make sure everything is nice and straight, and you just tie a knot. I tied it twice just to make sure it was good and secure, and just wrapping them around, looping them around repeatedly, nice and tight so it doesn't look loose and sloppy. You're just going to keep going around and around until you get to the point that you want it to stop. This will also be a good idea if you were looking for a headboard. If you have a long enough, you know, piece of stick or whatever, and you could just piece them together really too. You can do this, and this would be an awesome way to give your room a different type look. I did have to put something there because, you know, the piece does go back and forth. So to get it nice and tight, I did secure it with my water bottle. At the end of this, I did just wind up going and sitting on the couch and watching some shows and wrapping it around, because this process does take a while because you'll have to go through each one. But once you get to the end, you just tie it off. And I did a double knot again just to make sure it was secure, and then you just snip it, and then you'll go on to the other part. I did go up and down, skipping certain sections, leaving pieces out, because I did, like I said, I did like the yarn and the way it has like a little speckled look to it. So I wanted that to show as much as possible. So I wound up leaving gaps and different things in it. And then I'm just going to go back and forth with this on each section based on how long this section is, based on what I'm going to do with the yarn. And I'm alternating the colors. I picked 3 colors. I picked like a rust orange, the burgundy red that I'm doing here, and a gray, because they all complement the colors that were in the little specks of the yarn. All right, so once you're done with that, you can see how it changed. So it's not as full anymore because I wrapped it tight. So there's a lot of space left on this. So what I'm just going to do is slide it off, and I'm just going to use these little wooden dowels that I did have. I had a pack of like 12 that I got for real cheap, and they're about the same thickness of the rod. So I just slip them off and slide them onto there. And then once I was done with that, then I also had these beads that I had laying around from the Dollar Tree. I had did something else with them before. If you have little wooden beads, those would be cute on the end too. But this is what I did have, so I'm just going to hot glue those on the end. And that is it. The next one is going to be another CB2 one. It is a marble picture frame that I did see and I liked. I'm going to be using some supplies that I have from the Dollar Tree. All right, so I have this picture frame, which is gold, which is good because I want to use part of that as my base. And I'm just going to get some acrylic paints, and then I'm going to do like a marble effect on it. I did do a video where I did a marble tray, and I will put the link for that in there. So this is basically the same concept. I'm going to be using the chalk paint this time though. So I taped off two little sections where I want the gold to show through. But if you didn't want that, you would just tape off where you didn't want it to lap over. So you would wait for one to dry and then do it. But I want that little piece to go through, so I just taped off those two little sections, and I'm just going over with a couple of coats of the paint on each side. So I did one section with the white, and then I went over the other section. I didn't want to do it with the gray because that was going to be too light, so I just mixed the white and the black together to make foggy type, I don't know how to describe it, but just to make this like muddled type look there, because that'll help with the marble effect that I'm trying to do on the other side, because it looks like the CB2 one. Once everything was dry, I took off the paint, and then you can see the pops of gold that did come through. And then I'm just going to get a smaller paintbrush and paint the veins for the marble. I wound up, because I just grabbed the first black paint that I had because we were doing something else, and this paint dried so fast because when I did the marble effect the first time, I was able to go over and then come back, and the paint was still wet a little bit, and I was able to fan it out. This paint did not do that, so you have to be careful with the paint and maybe do a test, and you can see. So you can see there it didn't fan out, so I'm just gonna have to come back over it with the gray paint and try to dull down the color because the black is too bold for the white section, and I really didn't want that dark of a black on the black section either. So I'm just going to go over it with the gray and tone it down a little bit, and then I'm doing it in sections just in case, even though it's the same paint I used for the other one. I'm just going to fan over it quickly so that it doesn't dry out like the black did, and I'm just going over it till I get the look that I want. And then once I'm done with that, then I'm going to come back in and just hit it with a little bit of the gold paint in certain sections. And then that's really it for that. So that's basically it for that. And I just wanted to show you that you can do high-end type looks on a budget for cheap, because most of these only cost me a few dollars, even though they ran hundreds of dollars. So you can do easy home decor DIY in your house on the weekend while you're bored, whenever, and get some high-end looks. And you don't have to do it exact, because you can see I didn't do mine exact. I just used the pieces as inspiration to do something. So I hope you like, and I hope these inspired you and you can get out there and do something. And that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.